So we are here in the Freely Gallery here to talk about this piece of statuary, which you probably recognize as the Chimera, also known as the Chimera of Arezzo in Italy. It's one of the best known sculptures made by the Etruscans, the inhabitants of Tuscany of few millennia in the past. So this is a famous sculpture. People come from all over the world to see it, but I'm afraid that not everybody knows exactly what it means. And today I would like to spend about 20 minutes maybe discussing the meaning of this image, courtesy of the Freely Gallery that you see here around. This is obviously not the real chimera. The real chimera is in the Etruscan Museum, the Archaeology Museum in Florence, and this one is, however, faithful to the original because it was made on the original, same size, more or less the same. And you have this possibility, not everybody can. You can pet the chimera. Fantastic that you can do that. It's unbelievable. A mythological monster here. I can hug her because it's a female beast. So, what do we do here? When you have a work of art, something that you feel, you perceive that there is something here. Not everything you find in museums have these characteristics. Not everything gives you a feeling that there is something that you would like to know. That for me, you see, it's a strange story. I was here in this gallery maybe 15 years ago. I had a friend, an American friend from Hawaii. Her name was Susan, and she saw this thing. She said, "What is this?" And she asked me, "What does it mean?" And at that time I said, "I don't know, but I'll find out." And on that input, I even wrote an entire book. You can see it here on the Chimera of Arezzo. This is in Italian, I'm sorry. And I wrote it for Susan, essentially. So we are now in my studio. As you can see, there are a lot of books here. And what I wanted to show you is a specific shelf of books here, which is dedicated to the Chimera. Here is the shelf, complete shelf, all dedicated to the Chimera. But it's not just the shelf. There is more, but just out of your curiosity, you see, there are many books that take the Chimera as a title or somehow examine the Chimera as an idea of so many interpretations of the concept. And then there is, of course, also my own book on the Chimera. I added a little to the general confusion of the concept, but I think, as I said, it is an interesting concept, so it is worth studying. And in addition to the books, I also have a real chimera. Well, a real, let's call it like this. This is a little creature made in bronze, not as big as the original, of course. It cannot be, but it's a nice little chimera, which we can use to get some idea of how the concept works. So let's see to explain a little bit more what is the myth of the chimera. Because you see, we have this little beast here. Let me show it to you. Not little, it was as big as a lion. It was supposed to be a lion. So we saw the reproduction of the original Etruscan statue. It was big. But then what is it? What is it about? Because you see, it's very strange. There are not many things in our fantasy, modern fantasy, which are so strange as this beast.
because it is a lion, it is a goat, it is a snake. That is very clear. We have written records from ancient times, from Homer, for instance, and Homer is very clear. He says the lion is a monster. It was made out of three parts: lion, snake, and goat. Homer doesn't say anything about how these three parts were arranged. You could think of many different ways to arrange a goat, a lion, and a snake. Honestly, if this is to be a monster, I will not say it is very efficient as a monster. I mean, the snake is in the tail. The the goat, what? How can the goat harm anyone? And by the lion, of course, it can. It's a toothless lion. Have you noticed that? And so it's a little strange, but it is like this. It's there is no doubt about that. The chimera, the ancient chimera, is this. No other arrangement of animals is this arrangement in line. And because for the ancient, evidently, it was recognizable. You spoke of a chimera, and that's what you saw in your mind, or when you saw this in some pictorial or statuary or whatever, and you recognized it as the chimera. It's like for us, when you see Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse, it's a mouse, but a specific kind of mouse, which some characteristics that make it recognizable. It's not just there are millions of ways you could represent a mouse with some human features, but there is one Mickey Mouse, just like there is one chimera. So what is the story? Long story. You see, when you're talking about ancient myths, you have this idea sometimes that the ancients were a bit naive. These silly people. They didn't have science. They didn't have recording devices. They could write, but they didn't even have a paper, for instance. It was a different world, but so there is this tendency of thinking, well, the ancients were not so smart. So very often you find written in books on mythology, the chimera was just a naive representation of a volcano. It was big, the mouth emitted fire, there was this detail sprouting fire out of the mouth. And so somebody said, Plutarch, for instance, he says, well, somebody saw a big volcano. He or she thought it was a lion, and so they imagined in their naive minds that really it was just a volcano. They misunderstood a volcano for a lion. Not so smart. My impression, though, is that our ancestors were not dumb, not at all. And think 10 seconds about that. If a myth has survived for thousands of years, and this thing goes back to thousands of years ago. Very good, very nicely. It goes back to 3,000-4,000 years ago. The idea, maybe not the name of chimera, but the idea, yes. And if it is like that, it has to have something. There is a natural selections of myths. Now today we use the term meme, invented by Richard Dawkins. But it is true. If you invent a story, if it is good, it goes through the years, and you tell it to your children, the children tell to their children, grandmothers to grandsons and granddaughters, and there is this transmission. If the story is good, if the story is well made, if the story has a meaning, then it survives and it is still told. The story of the chimera, we still know it, and it has arrived to us through the written words of Homer, for instance, other authors of classical authors, but also in the form of images. And there is some evidence, I think, but this was a long story, that the story was still independently told in Tuscany in a form that told of a evil goat in the woods of Tuscany. Not from the literature. It was some story that maybe, just maybe, of course, cannot be proven, was arriving all the way from very, very ancient times. So, it is not stupid, it is not naive, but then what does it mean? Well, okay, what did the ancient think about it? And there is a version of the story. You probably know the story, maybe you read it, maybe you learned it at school. You know that the chimera as a story, it's written. And it is that it was a monster, of course, a sort of dragon, a special kind of dragon. It was haunting the woods at the time, long, long ago, in a galaxy far away. No, not a galaxy, but anyway, in some place very far away. And it was doing some damage, and one king somewhere called the local hero, someone named Bellerophon, the hero. And the hero came and said, I have this ugly beast, Mr. Bellerophon, would you like to get rid of it, please? And I'll give you in exchange my daughter as wife. Typical. You see, this is a very old story. Shiny hero goes, kills monster, marries daughter of the king. It's so easy. And that's the story as we read it. And we can find it. You see, let me show you a modern image of this story. Let's show you this. This is a very nice modern book, very nicely illustrated. You can imagine there was a chimera in it, and here we have it. Look at it. Let's see. You can see this, the chimera on here on your left, and there goes Bellerophon. Bellerophon is truly a shiny hero with his winged horse, which is as a name Pegasus. And look how ugly the chimera is in this image. It's a sort of in the style of the ancient chimera, because you see it is still the linear beast, but it's ugly. Honestly, this chimera is ugly. Nothing of the elegance that ancient chimera, the classic chimera, has. And then notice another thing. You see here how different it's all two pages, one page, another, two different pages. They seem to be two different planets, because really the author couldn't possibly harmonize these two creatures, so different. And indeed, I think they come from two different myths. The Bellerophon had his idea, okay, I will a shiny hero killing some monster. Chimera, a different myth, and sometimes the myths sort of get married, they get together and they create new versions of the myths. So it is a simple story. Hero kills monster, fine, but there is more, there is much more, and it would not be so simple if it were so simple. So why should we worry? And there is way more, and that doesn't tell us why this monster is made in this way. Why the goat? Why the snake? Why the lion? Because there have to be reasons. If it is made in this way, there have to be reasons. It has nothing to do with Bellerophon killing it. The fact that this is a three-sided, three beasts monster.
That's a very interesting story that I will tell you takes a while, because the reason why you have three beasts here, it is because of the very nature of the chimera. It's because it's a creature which is best described with a term which is now fashionable in biology, even though you never heard of it, which is a holobiont. Chimera, this has meaning in biology too, but is best described as a holobiont. A holobiont is a mix of creatures, which is, of course, you can see this, but take into account You yourself are a mix of creatures. We are mixes of creatures. Everybody, humans, lions, goats, snakes, Clara, who is filming now, we are all holobionts, mixes of creatures. And this mix, because you have plenty of bacteria in here, don't forget that, and viruses. Ooh, plenty of viruses around. Chimera is just a little bit clearer that it is a mix, but it is the same. It is a mix, moved into a virtual world. It's a myth. It's something that people have imagined. It cannot exist, of course. That's why we call chimera something that cannot exist, but exists in the minds of people. So it has an existence of some kind that you cannot deny, because this creature has a force, has a weight, as a spirit that you cannot possibly miss. When you come into this room, you'll see plenty of statuary, plenty of things, cat, people, goddesses, chariots, and things. But this has a power, a force, an inner force that you cannot miss. Now let me explain the story to you. First, the snake. The snake, it is there sometimes, but not always. This more like a late addiction, the snake. The goat is always there. Sometimes it's a real goat riding the lion, and the lion is always there. But if you go sufficiently back in time, thousands of years ago, you go before what we call the Mediterranean classic civilization, you go to the civilizations which preceded, which came before. Assyrians, Babylonians, Sumerians. Oh yeah, you find this beast. You do find it, but in a different form. Very often no snake and no goat. But you see the shape of the goat, strange shape. What does it look like? Think about that for 2 seconds. Doesn't it look like something that goes like this, goes like this, goes like this, goes? A wing. A wing, a wing, a wing. This is a wing, this is not a goat. In very ancient times, we had 2 wings, of course. You find plenty of images of the winged lion. Let me show you some images of this fantastic creature, which is the sacred beast to the Queen of Heaven, the goddess, Inanna. And this is a Sumerian image, extremely ancient, maybe 4,000 years ago. You see the beast? The winged lion, no snake. This is also, these are feathers or something like that. And notice the story. The goddess rides on the beast, and the beast brings water. You see, water, 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 water. It's another way. Our ancestors were not stupid. They were very intelligent, but they lacked the kind of information we have. And one of the things they saw that when impressed them, impressed still us when you have a thunderstorm. A thunderstorm, you think that up until a couple of centuries ago, people had no idea what a thunderstorm was. Why the noise? Why lightning? What is that? And so people thought maybe some creature, some huge winged flying lion was causing the thunderstorm. But not having any other information, it was not such a bad idea. It was an explanation. Just you have forces you don't understand, you think they are caused by some living creatures, but this is not stupid. They're not naive at all. We're returning to that kind of idea because the whole ecosystem of this planet is a whole which is in some way not controlled by intelligence as far as we know, but it is controlled. There is a control. I was telling you about holobionts. This is a holobiont, mix the ecosystem of this planet is a holobiont, too, is a mix of all the creatures of the planet, of the earth, me, you, all these creatures, well, it's not alive, but that's the idea, that's the force of being together. So what's happening here? That in a typical holobiont-like movement, which is so clear, so evident, so known that myths get together, they interact with each other. You have two parallel myths. One was the winged lion, the other was the evil goat. Mix them, and that's what you get. This creature. Strange, but perfectly logical, if you think of it in terms of an exchange of myths. Myths grow in this way, in a sense that they are having sex with each other. Myths couple, have children, grow, sometimes they die. Some myths have been lost in time, but this myth, we still know. It is still with us. It is still strong. It is still as force. And I think 2 minutes now we can explain a few things. Finish this story. It's a long story, but you see, it is so unbelievably interesting. It takes you so much, this creature. It's like a friend. At some moment you think you could, hello, how are you doing, little creature? You could have it in your garden as a guard dog. That would be effective, I think. Okay, so wings, no snake, a creature of fire and water. Rain, thunderstorm, roar, and flames coming out of the mouth, maybe. But about flames, where are the flames here? Where are the flames? Did you notice? This is supposed to be a mane. Is this the way a lion's mane is? But these are not a mane. Ladies and gentlemen, these are flames. See, this is the way flames are, not the mane. Mane is completely different. And so how about the water? Where is that water comes from? You saw the image. This is what? This is the tip of a fountain. It is a fountain of water, because if you go to the iconography of ancient times, you see that the roofs, which had a water controlling system of fountains, very often had a lion as the tip. A lion which sprouted water. We still have them. We call them gargoyles. In French, gargouilles. Sometimes are a little different. Sometimes they look like lions, sometimes not. But the idea is that you have at the tip of a water pumping system, you have an animal who sprouts water out of its water, which is the way things work, because in nature produces water. It's this beast, it's a holobiont representation. The ancient probably had some things clearer than we do. We think we have water because we pump it with motors and engines and things, but nature brings water. Nature is what makes us live. And this creature is the very embodiment of the forces of nature. Forces of thunderstorms, first of all, but of everything. This is a creature which fertilizes the earth and brings water and gives you grain. Let me show you again this image, because I think it is still a very modern image, which tells us that, you see, you have company to make the system work. You need to work together. You see, what does the goddess have in her hands? Maybe they are bolts of lightning, maybe, but more likely they are grain bunches. And you have water, you fertilize the land, and that's the way you live. This is life itself, this creature. You cannot have life without contrast, without different things moving together, getting together, doing things. And this creature does a lot of things. And then one last thing, you see, this creature is this inscription here on the leg. It's important because the artist thought it was so important that he would take the whole space of the leg to write it. And it's difficult for us to read it. There's very ancient Greek characters read from left to right, but most people who have studied that say that it's things will. Let's say it. Things will. Things will, what does it mean? Nobody knows. I do. Let me tell you. Not just me, a lot of people. Things will. Some people said it was the name of the author. Unlikely. Eventually there came a sort of agreement that things will means a gift to the god Tin. Tin, which in Etruscan was called Tinia. Tinia was the equivalent of Zeus, the equivalent of Jupiter, anyway, the big high god somewhere in the sky. Things will, this is my opinion, means actually the sound of water. It's supposed to bring water, and when you worship the gods to have water, you say things will, like we say sometimes amen, we say hallelujah, we say all these forms of words which are, we know what they mean, but they are mostly formulas, rituals, and that's all part of the ritual. So the little creature here is, you see how many things, and you saw it. There's no way that this thing would be a shallow, silly idea. This is so deep, goes back of thousands of years ago, it goes back in time, goes back inside our heads, and it tells you as much of what we are, what we think, how we relate with nature, because also, of course, in more modern time, this creature was not worshipped anymore, as in Babylonian or Sumerian times. It was killed by Bellerophon, the pest exterminator, Chuck Norris, or whatever you want to call him. And that's also the problem we have. We don't understand what makes us live. And we tend to kill the things that make us live. And we are doing this. And so this is the message of this creature, which comes from so far away in time and still resonates with us. Because the characteristic of myth is that they never really die. They reproduce, they grow, they change, they move, and they are always with us. And this is a good Holobiont, just like we are Holobiont, everything. And this creature is us. And thank you very much for listening, and let me thank Clara for having filmed this, and then we take a little image of myself and Clara, who has been so kind. And this is Clara, who is the manager of the gallery. We'll go back a little, and so you see how many things we have in this gallery, and also a very beautiful lady, I'd say. And so, this is a much more lively Holobiont yes, than these pieces of marble and wood, not wood, bronze. We have something in wood, I think, yes. And so, thank you very much. And Clara, did you like this?
Very much,
Okay.
very interesting.
Thank you.